Hello, everyone, and welcome to the spiciest episode of the Monte and Wolf Show. Degon here alongside Wolf, and it's not the spiciest just because all the games. It's also the spiciest because Wolf is not wearing a hat.
That's right. Everyone's always wondering, is Wolf wearing a hat? Is he not wearing a hat? Is his camera working? Camera working, no hat. This is why I wear a hat. You know, it looks okay, but you know, sometimes you just want to put a hat on. Degon's just rocking hatless and has gone a little pink.
Yeah, I'm supporting you, man. I followed your lead. I was ready to go get my hat. You didn't have a hat. It's something that the comments always talk about. And no hat Wolf, eat it up. Just like T1 and GenG downfallers, eating good this week. Lots of some of the biggest upsets of the year in the LCK. One of the biggest upsets of the year in the whole world of LoL esports, especially with the world's implications that are on the line as well. Very, very funny what KT did, not only to Gen.G, but to Hanwha and T1, and then ultimately T1 fans. But let's start at the beginning of LCK Playoffs. This format, unique in nature, where you have two opening matches, and the losers will drop down to losers bracket. But from there, it's a gauntlet. And that is the unique thing about this playoffs. The upper bracket losers get seeded. They're not like, oh, winners play whatever. They get seeded based off of the regular season ranking. And so that created a lot of this unique situation of like, okay, well, you know, if KT win, then it'll just be T1 or Hanwha dropping down to the lower side, and then KT ultimately will lose to Gen.G, right? And, you know, they'll be the ones that have to play for their world's lives. Not the case. KT beat the number one seed, which means they are the ones that drop down to the automatic qualifier for worlds as the fourth place seed. That is the lowest that Gen.G could finish. And that means the loser of the T1 and Hanwha Life Esports match is playing for worlds. They're trying to get out of fifth place. And I mean, it just created stakes that I don't think anyone could have imagined here, Wolf, off the jump. Like, no one could imagine that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy where we ended up with these big upsets coming through, and the way that the bracket now looks, we actually have either Hanwha or KT in the finals, like by default, right? Which is crazy because if you had asked me who's going to go to the finals last week, I would have been like, oh yeah, it's probably Gen.G T1 finals. You know, like that seems likely. But even with the somewhat rocky performance we saw from T1 against DPlus, where Carrier's Blitzcrank hook, you know, got them the win, I think that might have been possibly a warning sign, that series, that we should have taken and been like, oh man, T-Plus looking a little bit shaky. I kind of felt that way initially, but I was like, I don't know, D-Plus looking a little bit better, but also T1 kind of do this sometimes in the early parts of playoffs and right before playoffs, where they don't perform as well as they will later on. And if you underestimate them, you'll make a mistake like KT did when they picked them, right? That was like one of those iconic moments where T1 was kind of looking a little shaky. KT's like, oh, we picked them, and it was a mistake. But drafting issues for T1 showing up again. You know, the issues we saw in the DPlus series showing up big in their Hanwha series, and this bracket ended up being quite unusual, right? Like, we had the series we expected to go very one-sided, the Gen.G KT series, ended up being a 5-game banger, one of the best series of the year. And then you had the other series, which we expected to be a long, slog, grueling 5-game series with a lot of draft depth. Need to be digged into, and like we're like, ooh, I don't know, both of these teams' draft depth is a little bit questionable at times. And then it's just a 3-0 stomp. Like, that one's not even a series. It's not even a game.
Yeah. It was just a sight to behold, as I think you and Atlas called out when I was on the broadcast. It was my first time I got to be inside the LCK arena to watch a series, and man, shortest series ever. I got in during game 3, and that was the end of the series. I was like, okay, here comes the comeback, and we'll get into that series. Let's start off with how we got there with the opening round matches, and it didn't start with T1 DPlus. It started. It started with T1 DPlus, but we're going to start with BNK KT because this was a series that I think it showed us why KT were back. It showed us why. Not in game number one, because in game number one, I was sitting in the back, and the running joke was, man, imagine voting Raptor for third team All Pro, baby. I was eating good. Raptor was running the rift on the Xinjiao. Looked great. KT looked out of sorts. And more importantly, Cuz looked out of sorts. And then after that, Cuz said, hold on, I am greatness personified. I am going back to Worlds. You wait. And he took over the series, ended up winning POM, had some huge plays, had some year-saving plays. The Silas Zonia by the Baron. It was a great performance by non-BDD players, Wolf. And I think we should have taken a little bit more out of that, but I think it was hard because also we were interested with the way that BNK were playing as well and how they weren't playing as well.
Yeah, I mean, every game was different. It was not the way that KT beat GenG, which we'll get to a little bit later, felt like more of a strong theme with around two players the whole time. Whereas in this series, it was like every player had his game, right? And Cuz ended up getting the POM, but there were a few other votes you could have gone for. Game one was insane by BNK, though. They were able to match KT's super aggressive plays early. They had the Otacon setup where they had Vikla on Talia, and he was able to wall them, and they turn off of the Otacon while it's actually the aggro is being held by Raptor in that first game. So he's sitting on the Otacon, maintaining the aggro, getting it lower. They look for the fight. They don't actually throw. And it's like these types of situations that you don't see from Rise Group teams, like BNK, not known for that level of discipline, was really cool to see. Yep. And I do think KT earned it in the rest of the series. Like, we had Perfect on Aatrox getting that massive Q3 and that big team fight. There was then later on, obviously, the Cuz Silas play you mentioned, BDD popping off on Tristana and the Tristana Jhin composition, which is, again, an unusual comp, but they had the Nico to back it up, and they had the double melee of the Silas and the Renekton, so cool drafting there by KT. I think the drafting was really bad for a lot of this series for BNK. Like, they tried to do their thing where they're like, we have Raptor and he's going to gank early, but he's playing Skarner and it's in his first lane. And we're playing into Nico. And then they tried to do some stuff like that with the Neferi as well, and it just didn't work out the same way that it did in previous series. There was also the BDD Cuz Vi Syndra game where they had insane synergy that's mind linked in that final and fourth game, where it just felt like, okay, this draft is risky. Not sure if KT is going to pull this off. Not sure what's going to happen. And then it's just BDD absolutely smashes Vikla in lane and then goes around the map with Cuz, just taking people's heads off repeatedly, and played basically a perfect game of Syndra. And this was kind of a sign that KT can cook a little bit. I think we haven't really thought about KT as a team that's been very unique with its drafts, especially because Perfect's champion pool seemed so small that it felt like they were so limited in what they could potentially do. And BDD is just reminding people that he's actually been one of the best mid laners for the last 6 years. And he's like, oh, remember when I played Syndra? He's like, yeah, I was actually the best Syndra player. He's like, remember when I played Zoe? Yeah, I'm pretty good at that champion as well. He's just reminding people he can play Tristana as well. He's like, yeah, no one's really playing Tristana right now, but I also do that, and I do it really well. And we pull out an AP jungler in the Silas. So KT, when these, I want to think of these first series, the BNK KT series and the DPlus T1 series, as maybe kind of indicators we could have predicted that the upsets could have happened that happened later. But I think none of us were ready to trust. I saw this KT series and I was like, it was a really good performance. It was one of those moments where Cuz has the cool Silas play, but it was a little bit of a struggle there. It wasn't a clean game. It was very impressive what we saw in the end, but I think the game should have been cleaner. If KT is going to have any chance of beating GenG, it's not going to look like this. It's going to have to look way better for KT. And everybody knows I love KT. They're my favorite team, right? This is very obvious. I think I haven't really said it out loud too much. Everyone has said it instead of me. Everyone knows Wolf loves KT. I'm just ready to say it. Yeah, no, I love KT. They're my favorite team. They've been my favorite team for a long time. But I wasn't ready to get super excited. No excited KT puns intended. I wasn't ready to trust, let's say, this team, even though I felt like I had to like psych myself out. I was like, no, Wolf, like it's just BNK, bro. Like chill, They're actually not that good. Like it's not actually that good of a KT setup, man.
I think they were the dark horse to make it out, though. I think that's why, like, I was dismissing KT because I was like, oh well, they stopped the dark horse, so okay, good, but still, like, I don't know. I feel like we could have given more credit there to KT.
I wasn't. Yeah, I think we all kind of just told ourselves this was a fluke. This was an anomaly. This wasn't normal, and KT still isn't good. So just let it be. And maybe that's why, because nobody got excited. We all just didn't get excited. We were like, oh yeah, that's just, I don't know. Vikla played Morgana, lol. So is KT even good? I don't know. And then we just kind of shrugged it off. And then the rest is history. We'll talk about it later. But there was some really good moments in this series for both teams. BNK looking really good in that first game, but also keeping game 2 competitive. And then the drafts fell off a lot after that, in my opinion, and they didn't find the synergy or the cohesion they found themselves in when they were leading to this match.
Yeah, it just to hammer the point home, one of the greatest Otacon takes of the year in all of League of Legends esports in that game won by BNK. It was great. There was a game in the LPL that did it during playoffs this past week. I think it was an IG game. They did something similar where they kept the tether going. But I mean, when BNK did that, I was like, oh crap. Did we mess up Coach of the Year? We were dunking on Ryu's drafting, especially from last year. It started getting better through play-ins. Put this thing together. That is a coached thing. And then the draft will draft single threat compositions and not helping our best player in Diablo do damage on Sivir or not get to play the game on Varus against a Vi. It was Lissandra. It was Gwen. Who's he going to hit with Varus? Anyways, but yes, should have seen what's coming there. I think ultimately this series is both teams played to what their potential was. That's what this was, and they're where they could be was on visible for everyone.
Yeah, and it was like, believe it or not, and I chose not to believe.
Yeah,
I chose not to believe KT after this series.
All of us did, except I think most of the roller coaster riders as well. Also, it was more of a relief, like, oh god, we didn't get rised. Let's move on over to T1 DPlus. This series went 5. This is how we kicked off the week. We're like, okay, what DPlus are we getting and what T1 are we getting? And we got a rusty T1 throughout the series, testing a little bit in the draft, but more importantly, DPlus looking ready to go. And Shiwu carrying over the form that he had from play-ins to playoffs. And again, maybe a preview of what was to come, which was our second team All-Pro Doran looking like we're playing in America, not in Korea, because he did not play well in the next series. But, it's both Shiwu played well, and Doran didn't have the same impact that he's had throughout the year that we've all been hammering home for those that haven't been watching. But all of you that watch the show know what we're talking about. Doran's looked great, but Shiwu looked good in that series. What else jumped out at you about this one?
I mean, I actually thought even though Doran's KDAs were pretty bad in the games, like he sacrificed himself a lot to try to carry his team across the line. Like I even thought about potentially voting for him for POM in that series. There was a lot of different votes you could have gone for. Faker in his good games was very good, but in his less good games was not. The Talia game in particular coming to mind, which was game 4, I think. And then you have the final game, right? Like the thing that stood out to me about this series was DPlus should not have been able to do as much as they did. Aiming had some phenomenal performances. Showmaker pulled out the Tristana, right? He had a good Tristana game. We did end up seeing the Twisted Fate from Showmaker as well. And Lucid pulls out the Kiana, which Kiana just doesn't work in Korea. Right. I've been talking about this on the Descal. I talked about on the cast yesterday. Like, I don't want to harp on it too much. I just don't think Kiana works in Korea. But like there was some cool drafting from DPlus, but the execution was bad, and yet still they were able to bring it to 5. And the fact that T1 only made it to the upper bracket finals, where they were then stomped by Hanwha, they only made it there because aiming walked into the Blitzcrank hook is actually unreal. Like, if he doesn't get hooked there and he doesn't die there, and they actually just keep playing out the game and he keeps scaling, it's a very similar situation to what happened to T1 with Viper just yesterday, where you just blow up and die. And like he was in such a good position. Aiming had the backup of that side laning Tryndamere, which like didn't do damage in that game, but actually was a real threat and actually was starting to become a problem. And then obviously the Gwen. So it's this like 1-3-1 comp that they kind of had set up with the Ivern that makes it difficult to kill the Smolder, has the brush set up. Like this draft was really cool from DPlus. And I don't think it was like a super powerful draft, like necessarily. I think that T1's draft was absolutely playable. It's not like they draft gapped them, but all the win conditions were lining up. Aiming was stacking. He was scaling. The side lanes were online. T1 had very little agency. And like Kerio was just like throwing out hooks. Like, I've got to hook somebody. It's the only way we can get back into this game. And Aiming's performance, his positioning was so bad. Like, I mean, I don't even want to. I harped on it on the desk. Like, everyone's like, Wolf, like, let it go. I'm like, I'm not going to let it go, because he literally like flew into the hook. Like, it was actually unreal. He had flashed up. Like, there's just no saving it for you in this case. Like, I don't even know how he like could hold his head high, like going back with the team after that, because that's just the kind of mistake you can't make. It's like the whole thing about the comp is you're the carry, you're scaling, you're actually going to pop off. All conditions have been met, and it's like, I don't know. It's like, forget, like you imagine you worked on something, like you have a crush on this girl and you spent like the whole night like building this thing for her. You made this really awesome thing that's got her name on it, and it's like made out of popsicle sticks or whatever, and you've spent the whole night toiling and gluing them together, and it's this really cool thing because you're such an artist, right? And then like you go to school and you're like, I made this thing for you, like open your backpack, you're like, I left it at home, shit. Like, that's like what it felt like to me. I'm like, I did everything right for him, everything's set up, and then he's just like, oh, I got hooked though. So I guess that everything that it doesn't matter anymore.
Welcome to Wolf's therapy sessions on High School Drama. What was that?
No, I mean, you know what I mean?
I'm like, so sorry you left your love note at home.
I didn't. I didn't. That never happened to me. But like, I don't know what else analogy to make. Someone built something amazing, and then I don't know, accidentally kicked over it. Aiming kicked over his own sandcastle. Like, I don't know what to say. Like,
dog ate the homework. Yeah, I get it.
But it's like he ate his own homework. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's why I meant he forgot it at home. Like, it's like his whole team built this up for him. He played well overall in that lane and stuff, and then it's just. So anyway,
and I really like that draft too. Like, that draft is really good.
It's super high risk, but I think with how they played it, it worked out incredibly well. And like the fact that they had the Poppy into the Xayah is like actually totally fine. And the Tryndamere into Victor is tough, but Showmaker obviously had mastery of the champion, so it worked out. But my frustration with the whole way this series went for T1 draft wise, they left themselves a lot of holes, right? Like, they ended up playing the Aphelios, that didn't work. Like, again, super easy to just blow up that champion. Like, the Thresh isn't necessarily going to save you there. Like, they played a lot of stuff that wasn't standard per se, but also just wasn't very inspiring. And like, sometimes we see the Aphelios Thresh from T1 for Gumakeria, and you're like, oh god, this is the angle. You're playing into front to back comp, you're going to shred that tank. But it was like a Gnar composition with Tristana Ziggs, they played that into, and so it just wasn't going to work very well. And I think T1, I expected going to the series that even with bad drafting, they would still just be the better team, and that technically was true, I guess. Like, they ended up winning game 5 and the Blitzcrank hook hit, but if aiming just doesn't get hit by that hook or subsequent hooks and just plays out the game like Viper did, then they just lose, and then they go to the lower bracket, and then who knows what would have happened. Like, I think DPlus probably would have been the choice of Gen.G, and like we would have seen a completely different bracket and all that stuff. Different. So like, who knows like what today would look like, or what last 2 days would look like, So pretty wild stuff. Like, and this I think should have been more of a warning sign for T1. But like I said earlier, I was kind of like, nah, it was just a little bit of a weird series for them. It's DPlus. Maybe they didn't respect them that much. Maybe they're trying to hide some stuff. And, you know, T1 sometimes, like I said earlier, plays a little bit weird before the stakes get really high. And oftentimes, even a series like this for T1 levels them up because they're like, "Oh, I guess that's not going to work out. We should definitely play a little bit differently in the next series."
Yeah, and that has been why I think that has been the fuel for the T1 Fast and Furious franchise. It's the ones that you skirt real close to danger and death, but you know they're going to pull it out. You know everything's going to be fine. You know, you may lose a character along the way, but you get a Doran in exchange, but everything's going to be fine. And it was not in the next series for T1. For DPlus, I just look back at the Game 5 draft, and I'm like, everyone was going to do their job. Like, everyone was doing their job. Like, the Ivern pick was pumping early. Like, Showmaker's job theoretically, at the end of this stacking period for Smolder is to get in there, get low, press ult, and execute everyone. He's the damage that executes everyone because Shiwu can get in there. Aiming is gonna put the execute on everyone, and it just never got there. And the game actually ended pretty early at like 28 minutes because they had to defend against a Baron, which is just that's not what this comp does. This comp wants the team to come into them, super scorcher breath onto everyone, and then you chase, right? But if they were the ones backed up, you can't play this comp. So I liked the drafting from Bengi CV Max, whoever is making the draft calls there. I liked the idea compared to a standard scale late draft with a blitzcrank for T1. That's the type of ingenuity that has been coming up here in the best of fives, with teams being like, look, we can't ban everything. We have to take risks. We can take risk with bans against them, and we can take risks with our picks and our composition that we want to play, and especially shown it in game fives. And was not the case here by wasn't able to come out for a win here by DPlus. So before we dive into the upper bracket series, the big series, the big upsets, it's time to remind you about our friends over at Mando. Now, I could tell you how much I use Mando, but I think it's easier for Wolf to tell you how much he uses Mando. He uses Mando so much in their clinical strength sweat control that he needs another order yet again. Saved his marriage last week when he went out to go shopping. His wife was like, "Oh, you smell so good. When did you shower?" "I didn't shower, baby. It was Mando." But now he needs a reload because he realizes that's the key for the future.
I mean, it's so convenient because there's so many different types, right? That you can use between the cream, the normal deodorant stick, and well, I've been using a lot recently, the spray. And I love the bourbon leather smell. I think it's very good, but there's a lot of other options. But it's just so easy for me when I'm in a hurry to spray it and go. And like, you would think that with a lot of other deodorants, especially spray deodorants, like it doesn't work that well, and you come off like a little bit. Like you come off as you just sprayed a bunch of Axe or something, and you're like, and everyone's like, oh man, this guy's just I don't know what he's trying to do, but he smells wrong. Like he smells like chemicals, doesn't smell like that. And like when I cast, it gets super hot, especially on a day like yesterday where it's a completely packed arena. There's so many people. Sometimes when T1's playing, I swear they turn the aircon down. I don't know. It's hot in there. I'm sweating, but I'm also on my bike. Like I ride my bike to work. I'm out in the sun. I'm stuck at the red light and I'm dying. But like, I get to work and I go, doesn't stink. It's wild. Like it's crazy. It actually just works so well. And I've been like kind of floored by it, like over the last few years, like how well it's actually impacted my summers. And like, it's the middle of September, but it's still hot as hell in Korea here. So it's just, for me super convenient. I always carry the stick with me at work as well, just in case. It's really small, it's really portable. So I've just been telling everyone about it. And stay not stinky. Stay smelling nice. Don't be stinky.
72-hour odor control, aluminum free, 6 different scents for you to choose from. As the aforementioned bourbon leather, clover woods, cedar grove. I like the Pro Sport myself. And if you don't like scent, they've got unscented as well to keep you covered. So head on over to shopmando.com and use the code Monte Wolf for 20% off, plus 2 free products of your choice, like the mini body wash and deodorant wipes. It's part of the starter pack that you get by using the code Monte Wolf for 20% off site-wide using the code Monte Wolf at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. One of the products we use all the time, thanks to our friends over at Mando. All right. Now, Wolf, now it's the time, as we said in prep for the show, it's to choose your own adventure. Which series looked worse for the losing team? Did it look worse for T1 losing 3-0 to Hanwha Life Esports? Or does it look worse for Gen.G losing 3-2 to KT as the number 1 seed and only 1 series loss all year long? And we'll talk about the one that is more disappointing for you.
That's a really good question, because while I do think the result is more disappointing for T1 because they got 3-0'd and they didn't look like they had even a prayer in that series, I would actually choose Gen.G because the way that they played was not up to their standard. I think they're going to be insanely disappointed with some of the individual performances we saw from like Chovy, for example, for Canyon, and they lost to KT, who was like number 4 in the Legend group, right? A team that's much weaker. The team they chose, as they expected to be the weaker team, and KT just was able to clutch it out in the end with some really cool drafting and some really big plays. And so, you know, I think if you're Gen.G, you're like, this should have never happened. Like, we should be looking at, like, they probably thought they're going to face either T1 or Hanwha, but probably thought they were facing T1 like most people thought they would be facing T1 in that upper bracket finals, and then they just go, oh, that's an easy one. T1's not in perfect form right now. We go to finals. We'll see you there. That's, like, I think what Gen.G thought. Now they have to go through this awkward lower bracket run that they're like, we're Gen.G, we're the first seed. Like, we lose to no one. They haven't lost a best of 5 since LCK Cup.
Yeah.
Like, and they lost to KT. Like, how could this happen? So I would choose Gen.G KT, I think.
Good. That, to me, that is the correct answer as well. I think for a multitude of reasons. I think one, and it started with the coach's comments, Wolf. If you remember, Coach Kim was like, we're not afraid of trying things. We're going to, and they did. They went game 1 smolder. I was like, that seems a little disrespectful. Like, I guess. And Smolder Bard, is that a thing? Jin Bard's a thing. Smolder Bard, like, are you holding him in place? Are you making space for him? They went the Pantheon first, right? Like, again, it just a lot of unique stuff. The Aurora and Orianna priority has gone up globally, so that part made sense to me. But just ending up with the Smolder is kind of interesting because we've seen a rise in bot lane priority in rounds picks 1 through 3, and just to kind of throw the Smolder in there early felt like a throwaway game, and it's I guess it's not maddening, it's just disappointing because if you're Gen.G, you've won everything, you've beaten everyone internationally as well. So why not take this one series in a best of 5, your first best of 5 in the summer, to tinker a little bit as you get closer to Worlds? And the thinking makes sense. It's just disappointing that the tinkering cost them. And then when it was time to hunker down, they weren't able to. And that's where I think the disappointment comes in, because you can look at what a quiet series, very quiet series, very quiet for Canyon. It was a whisper. It was, very quiet for Chovy. He had a couple of moments, but he was quiet. Keen doing his best. Ruler was there. Difficult drafts to play into. And then Duro, uneven. But, I mean, he didn't have a jungler to play with. I think that's where the disappointment comes in. And we will celebrate KT. Don't get me wrong. Like, again, I'm with the KT guy. on our cast, and I even tried to bait you on the broadcast, but I was like, I don't know, I'm like, you guys don't seem pretty excited. Do you remember that? And both you and Cronny were like, we're not excited.
So like we talk about the smolder game in game 1. If you compare this, we just talked about the other smolder game from the T1 DPlus series, right? In that smolder game, the only way to catch aiming is Blitzcrank hook. Otherwise, you have Trundle, he can't reach him. Renekton, sorry, it's not going to happen. Like, you can't get to the smolder. It's a good smolder draft. Ultimately, Keria did reach him with Blitzcrank. That's not supposed to happen, but it did happen, right? But like, that's a really good smolder draft. And then you look at the GenG draft, where I think the reason they picked smolder here with Bard is that they legit thought that with the press the attack and Bard lane, this seems like something they've been screaming, right? They think they beat Yunara hard and win the game, and then Smolder's they gets ahead and they stack it up, because we never see press the attack on Smolder. It's always fleet footwork, right? He didn't go obviously for the teleport, because he's like, I'm winning this lane. He went cleanse for a little bit of additional safety. He's playing into Annie, right? He needs that cleanse bad if the game state doesn't work out. But in this draft for KT Rolster, they have Annie, Jarvan, and Alistar. So there's just a lot of ways to get on top of and kill this Smolder in this draft for KT. So you played for, I can beat Yunara this way, but it just doesn't in practicality against a team that's actually good work out when they have all those threats to kill the Smolder, which is what happened. Like, it was hard for Ruler to deal damage. He died only 3 times in the game. It wasn't like a complete stomp where Ruler was just constantly dying, but it was hard for him to play the game, right? And the Orianna combos that they wanted to set up with the Tempered Fate just never really came to fruition because of the way this draft works for KT. So experimentation here for Gen.G, I think around the bottom 2v2 that just didn't work out. And then you go deeper in the series, they have the Rise game. That goes a lot better, right? BDD playing Cassiopeia. Had some moments for sure, but it wasn't enough to get them over the line. But it gets more interesting later when like Keen's playing Camille, right? I really like this draft. He was considering playing the Olaf actually instead in this game, but ultimately decided to go for the Camille, which makes a ton of sense. Like, there's too many threats for the Xayah. But this game was I would argue my favorite game of the series, because Gen.G had a really cool draft. They had the Sivir, Camille, Galio, so they've got insane wave clear. They have Vi. It's so many threats for the Xayah. They're playing into this Skarner as well, so they're just like, oh, as long as we don't get massively impaled here on our engages, we're totally fine. We could rip through the Skarner and the Cassante with the Sivir. And yet, like, BDD played a pretty good game until he's 0-4-4, but he actually was able to zone them really well. Like, it's the Galio, right, that's trying to get in. He's actually constantly shoving him, constantly keeping him away. Duckdom's Xayah performance was out of this world. He went 6-3, had some near game turning and game saving plays on the Xayah in this game. This game was so interesting because, yes, it was a one-sided Gen.G win, but the fact that KT kept it interesting, kept it close,
very
close, so many kills,
very close,
down so much gold. That was the moment, like, that was the moment in the series where I was like, could KT possibly win? Even though, like, at the end, it was Gen.G was up 2-1, they were on match point. That was, to me, the moment where I was like, damn. And like, I was on the desk with you and Chronicler, right? And we were making a lot of jokes about something that Chronicler said, where I said, I think Duckdom is basically like mini Ruler. Like, he's so close to Ruler in playstyle. He's very good. And Chronicler said to me, I don't think Duckdom is elite. And I was like, no, I think Duckdom is elite. And then we like had some banter about it. And like, I think Duckdom may have changed Chronicler's mind by the end of the series, but that happened right before this. And like, I was like, are you sure like Duckdom's not elite? Because he's looking pretty elite right now. And
the jokes from this week have been elite. We're just cashing in on, like year-long calls that we've made, and Duckdom not being elite, and then him having this performance that he did against Gen.G, against Ruler, our elite mid lane bot laner in the LCK is hilarious. Like, and that one is going to stay with us. You all at home can join us in that. Is Duckdom elite? ? And he's going to Worlds and no lower than the 3rd seed. So great job, Duckdom. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't.
Let's roll forward to like more elite Duckdom in game 4, where he plays Ziggs, and it's Ziggs Zoe. So there's like really no strong 80 damage in this draft. Like, it's a burst mage and a burst mage. And like, yes, in longer fights, Duckdom can do consistent damage if he keeps hitting his Qs and keeps playing the minefields down, and people keep walking into it, whatever, because they have to get to him. But it's really an insanely risky comp where you have to be winning the whole time. There is at any point you're not winning, or it's an even game, it's done. So like you can't win the game anymore because you have to always have objective set. BDD has to always be firing his shots in his trouble bubbles into the enemy team and setting up as they're trying to approach. If he has to walk towards GenG, if GenG are like hunkered down on an objective and BDD has to find his way in, like never gonna happen. Like it's just way too hard. Ruler's playing Corki, so he can punish you, can burst you down. BDD did make that one mistake where he went in and got blitzcrank hooked. It went a little bit too deep. It was a good play from Duro, but like that's Zoe, you know where she's gonna go back, and Duro's just like cool free hook. That did happen. That was a problem, but
the team fought that off really well. Like
and that was
ensuing 4v5.
Exactly, because that's when Duckdom had the amazing satchel and was able to kite back and do a ton of damage. Duckdom deathless, by the way, in this game. I think Duckdom had the hardest job to play, even with the winning game state they were in, because there were just so many threats. He has to play into a Kiana. The Poppy's playing super aggressive. It's hard to break through that Poppy's health bar. You know, if it's a squishy top laner who's running at you, you satchel them away, then you're like, haha, keep coming at me, I kill you. Whereas Poppy is like, I'm still there. I'm still really healthy, by the way. And so, like, it was really tricky. Yes, obviously, just played into the Blitzcrank. But this was kind of like, to me, a very strong representation of, because plays Nocturne here, he's like, I'm going to turn the lights off. We're going to play this Burst Mage in the Zoe. BDD has mastery of this champion. He's one of the best Zoe players in the world, if not the best. He's only one playing it right now, so in current form, probably the best. But he pulls this out as an amazing performance. Gets fed early. This is a huge mistake by GenG, by the way. They try to put him down early to say, okay, well, we're going to put you behind at the beginning of this game, and you'll never be able to play. But he outplays them with Cuz's help, and some of Peter's help as well. And he just gets fed early, gets those early 2 kills, gets online, and then he's just like, this is my playground. You know, this is actually me controlling the entire shape and form of Summoner's Rift right now, with constantly zoning with the bubbles, constantly harassing, constantly hitting big paddle stars and massive damage. So they messed up how they played the early game. This Kiana didn't work. Too calculated was KT. The counter ganks were super strong. And then KT just never let go. And this was just one of those KT drafts where you're like, I couldn't have predicted this. I couldn't have seen this. If you look at all the champions everyone's playing, Duckdom known to be good at Ziggs, right? Peter playing Nautilus, okay, perfect on Renekton. Like these champs all make sense. And it's like, oh, I could see this draft, but you never think KT would actually put it together against Gen.G and outplay them and actually pull it off. Like that's something I don't think anyone would have expected or predicted. And the whole time you're watching the game, I mean, you and I and Kronk are watching together, we're like, is this the fight where they mess it up? Is this the fight where they mess it up? And it just didn't happen. Like, the one time BDD got caught, then Duckdom outplayed and they got away, I'm like, okay, it wasn't it. Like, they're still in it. It's still possible. It's still playable. And they just didn't mess it up. And they won. And we went to game 5. And it was just like, any KT fan's dream to watch this play out.
The dream because it finished, but the dream and the nightmare. Every fight was so stressful.
If you guys didn't know I was a KT fan before this, know something else about me. More than a KT fan, I am a BDD fan. And BDD on this Zoe popping off, and then going into game 5, pulls out the Lissandra pick, which is so good into Callista, but also just like so unusual. And they're still able to pull the game off. Duckdom has an amazing performance on the Ezreal. And that last game, they just were like, yeah, no, Renata has no real value here because of how we can zone with this Maokai, which was also a really cool pick in the draft. KT's drafting was sick here. The performances backed it up. BD plays, Lissandra, it feels like almost randomly, but it works well with the Wukong. It's good into Callista. And Chovy looks invisible. We haven't talked too much about, like, I'm very KT biased on how I've been talking about this series, but it's like these steps, right? Duckdom Zaya, you want to be like, is this possible? You watch the Zoe game, you're like, holy shit, is this possible? And then in game 5, you're like, is this good? And then you're like, it is good, yes. It's really good here, and they smashed them and they won. But there were problems with Canyon's performance. Like, he had a horrible series. He was choosing the wrong times to go in. His smites were off. Like, his 0-6 Lee Sin, like one of his best champions historically, who even had the stat come up, and it was like, an obscene win rate, like in the 80% points. And then he just has a horrible game. He did not do anything on Kiana, really. I'd say his best game was the Vi game when he was playing with Chovy's Galio. And otherwise, like the Pantheon game in game one, we kind of glossed over that when we were talking about the drafts earlier, but like that was a really rough game for him. He didn't do really anything. It was just a really, really tough series for him. Even in the Xinjiao game, like it was not clean. Cuz did a lot more work in that game than he did. And it was just a massive jungle gap, it felt, across the series. And then Chovy was also, outside of the Galio game, pretty invisible as well. Just not able to do anything with these drafts, spending a lot of time in side lane. I felt like Chovy was resigned to, like, we lose this series, I'm gonna side lane. It felt like in some of those games. And
especially in that game 5. Especially in game 5.
That's like the Hanwha Life Esports Chovy Twisted Fate, like 003 or whatever, like, and he's in the side lane while the Nexus is exploding. He's like pushing top lane. That was not the performances I think that all Chovy MVP voters were expecting to see in this series. And I think some of it's a product of draft. Some of it's a product of like the issues that KT created for them with their really unique and cool drafting here. But he just didn't hit. Like, he wasn't hitting. He was not finding consistency in this series.
Yeah, and definitely not, I would say, is not what I was looking for from the Chovy series. But I would blame draft a lot more. I go back to Coach Kim's coach comments where they weren't afraid of showing things and they weren't afraid of trying things. And I think if you have drafts where you're supporting your team, you picked Kalista Renata. Like, TF is not going to be the main character in this game. When you're playing Galio, you're not going to be the main character of this game. And I think Chovy could only, work with the parts that he had, both in terms of the draft and the form of the teammates that day. And nothing will tell you more about the form of Canyon that day, other than when Cuz goes, takes the Elder Dragon, or takes I think it was the Drake,
Baron, and
then runs top to go take the Baron in front of Lee Sin's face. Lee Sin has the kick. He has the resonating strike to go on in and burst it down, and Cuz just flips it. He flips the game in front of him. People will forget that, but he was just vibing in front of Canyon's face and takes it, and then KT can continue moving it down, even though they were on soul point. They did not need to do that, but Cuz was just in such great form. He was a great mental. He's a great spirit. He knew what was coming, and it was just like, I'm going to win this one over Canyon, and was able to do so and did it. And like, when your comment was like, oh, this is the Cuz meta, I am the Cuz meta, whatever it was, something like that. Like that was beyond Cuz meta for me, man. Like, Cuz meta was like, oh, it's actual meta. It's a champion, or the way the game's played. No, Cuz
not anymore.
Said, my balls are bigger today. I had to figure out how I wanted to say that. My balls are bigger today. Do not forget that. And I just, I don't know where Canyon was. Canyon was in the Mind Palace, where he normally tricks other people and leaves them lost. And instead he got lost. And it was uncharacteristic, but has happened before. Happened during LCK Cup at the beginning of the year. When the bros got the win, it was when Chovy and Canyon were struggling. And I don't think Chovy has as much to do with this one as it does Canyon, and as does the compositions that didn't allow Ruler and Duro to get going. Like, I think Canyon had so much to do with this.
Ruler, I feel like, had a pretty good series. Like, he played very well across the series, even in their losses, but it was hard to remember what he did when I looked back at the best of 5, because I was like, oh yeah, he played well, but he could never like do it. He couldn't carry it because, Canyon wasn't there, and like Chovy wasn't having phenomenal performances. Like, even in the Zoe loss, like, Ruler died 3 times, but he had 7 kills. Like, he was cleaning up fights. He was almost able to kill Duck Dom right in that last moment we talked about when BDD got picked. I think if he flashes in there, like, we had a big discussion about it off camera about, like, maybe he flashes in there, maybe he kills Duck Dom, maybe the game has a different result, maybe, GenG wins. We don't know.
Yeah.
But, like, he had a really good performance, I think, in general. I can't really point fingers at him. But the drafting was experimental, and there were issues. but maybe Gen.G learns a lot from this. That's a good point Chronicler made, is that like this might actually be the series that wakes Gen.G up a little bit, and then they end up learning from this, and this might be a moment we point back to, like when Gen.G lifts a Worlds trophy or something. We're like, I remember like when KT beat them though, and then they got like even better, they got like even stronger. We don't know that for sure, but this could be like a moment we look back at for sure if Gen.G do end up looking much better in their future series. But it was just a great series. Like everyone played well on the side of KT. They were the underdogs. Gen.G underperformed, but it was still high level League of Legends. Like KT still earned it. Like I think if you look at the series and you're like, KT only won because Gen.G were bad and Canyon was bad, I think you didn't really watch. I think like Canyon looked bad, but also Cuz played amazingly. So the gap felt massive, right? And so this was still a close series. It was still a best of 5 that went to 5 games. It was still KT, forcing their way across the finish line. And Perfect was there. Like he didn't do that much in the series compared to the series against BNK, where he actually had, in my mind, a much larger impact than he did here. But this was like individual players on KT, 2 of them specifically, BDD and Cuz, really popping off, and Duckdom also having a pretty big day. And that's the story of this series, more than like Canyon wasn't there to me.
Yep.
I'm a little KT biased, but like that's the story. I think this series was one of the best of the year because it had everything. It had the fearless drafts. It had like the Zoe, the Lissandra, the smoldering game 1. Like it had so many cool layers to it that it's going to be definitely a memorable one for me when I look back at 2025.
Oh yeah. I said it on the broadcast. We like caveated it a little bit. I doubled down, Wolf. This is the biggest upset of the year across League of Legends. It's up there with Cloud9 Shopify, Cloud9 100 Thieves. I think they go back to back there. Maybe the KC top esports like during LCK Cup, but no way. I mean, it was such a huge win against the best team in the world with the stakes that it was. Awesome. Just awesomeness to watch and behold as a fan of League, and loving the best of 5s and cashing in on fearless draft. Like it's just, I hope that Worlds has a moment like this as well, where it all comes together and you get heroes that rise that also you just feel good and feel like deserve it. Like I'm getting goosebumps again, get a little teary-eyed again, just because at the very end, we're all running around. We know that we're going to have Coach Score in the space, but as they're doing the celebrations, you get to see how much it meant to the players. You get to see how much it meant to the fans. All the fans are crying. They pan over to BDD, who hadn't won a best of 5. Hadn't won a best of 5, game 5. And you just see his eyes welled up. It's just, you can't help but feel for the human emotion that comes from competition in the platform that we've all given our lives and enjoyed, and to have a servant like BDD, one of those Elite 4 mid laners, to get that opportunity in that platform to do it at Worlds after missing it last year. It's just great.
I think people don't realize like why it means so much to BDD. Like people give that stat of like it's the first time he's won a game 5, and they're like, that's why he's emotional, because it was like he finally did it. No, man, BDD is emotional because, by the way, never respected in the same vein as Faker, Chovy, or Showmaker. He has never been respected by Western or Korean fans the same way. Like he just hasn't been. The fact that he was able to get All Pro second, I think, is a big turning point for fans and or not even fans, but I think for analysts and just people in general, finally giving him the respect he deserves. Because people forget that when he was on Gen.G, he was like the best mid laner for a lot of that year. When he almost dragged his team across the line to go to the World's Finals. He has been an amazing mid laner. He went through that time on Nongshim, where that team was all super rough. The BD was very outspoken that he had long COVID and he was really like unable to play the game at the level that he had used to play. But you think back to even like BDD's debut, he was insane back then as well, but never got like, he was always overshadowed by Faker and Chovy. And then Showmaker enters the scene, right? And the Damwon thing happens, and he's always been like 4th at best, it feels like, in terms of what people think about mid laners, even though he's been so much better than Showmaker for so long. To be honest, like let's all just be honest and say it, like he's been better than Showmaker for a really long time. but no one ever says it. Like no one ever acknowledges it. It never comes up. Like he doesn't get the cool spotlight in the intros until very recently, right? Like on these KT intros, finally he's getting at least the respect from like the LCK and these opening videos where like he's at the top of the steps when KT are going up there, that kind of stuff. But I think that's the thing for me as someone who's loved watching BDD play for really since the beginning of his career. I'm always frustrated that he just never gets the recognition he deserves and is never considered one of those top. And I think for a lot of people, even like when Riot does like the world songs and they're looking at that kind of stuff, they're like, I don't know. I know the big ones though. Like I know Chovy, I know Faker, I know Showmaker. And the BDD is just always kind of forgotten by everyone. And I think for him to beat Gen.G in this moment, his old team, by the way, that was the peak he had. And then after he left Gen.G, he's like never been able to be that close to being in a World's Finals, right? He's never been able to be that close to the top of the LCK until now. He beats his own team, beats Chovy, the person who's overshadowed him before he was on like Gen.G. He was overshadowed by, or like when he was on Gen.G, before Chovy was on Gen.G, he was overshadowed by Chovy. There's that famous Chovy Yone game, which is where the Chovy meme is from, where he just got destroyed by Chovy's Yone. When he was on Gen.G, BDD has like always been behind these top players, right? In terms of everyone's minds and in everyone's eyes. And like, I think for him to beat his old team finally to say like, no, I did it on a completely different team with a weaker roster. Everybody knows it. It's a weaker roster. He did it. He accomplished it. He played Zoe. He played Lissandra. He was a huge part of that win. That's why he got emotional. That's why he teared up, because he's like, I did it finally. Like, and it's not like he hates Chovy and like he wakes up every day being like, I am better than Chovy. Actually, that's not what I'm saying. Don't misread me, fans. But what I am saying is like for him, he's like, finally, I showed what I'm capable of. My team backed me up, and it was on that day he was a big part of the win, but it was also just like, finally, it's not just me. It's like we all did it together. My team trusted me. We played together well. We beat Gen.G. And like now, you got to think like anything is possible if you're BDD. If you're perfect, you got to think like anything is possible. Maybe they could win the whole thing. Maybe they could win Worlds. If you could beat Gen.G in this best of 5, what else could you do? You know, and that's just, it's all these things, all these emotions, all these new possibilities that are opened up. And I'll tell you, as a KT fan, as a KT enjoyer, before this playoffs bracket started, I knew in my heart, like, KT might lose to BNK, and it won't even surprise me. So I had, like, no investment, right? I had no investment in KT's run through this bracket. I was like, maybe next year we'll see a different roster. Maybe they'll replace Perfect. We've talked about on this show so much, like, who's going to replace Perfect? Like, they got to do it. And then they win against BNK, look clean. I'm like, still not invested. Now I'm invested, Deacon. Now I'm trapped. Now it actually matters to me what happens next.
Oh, yeah, man. Perfect. Worst top laner at Worlds from a major region? I think so.
Could be.
Oh, actually, no. Saved. They got saved. They got saved by Gam going out. Gam lost to Team Wales. But otherwise, you had Driver or Rest. Because Kiaya was the one that was going to be there. I'd be like, I don't know. I might take Kiaya from Gam. Like, he's pretty good. Good for Perfect. Perfect, a World's top laner. That's just crazy. But, you know, the hopes and dreams and tears of BDD work wonders. And then you could just tell the vibe of the team, because in the post-game interview, the very first thing Cuz says is, yeah, BDD was crying in the back. It was very funny, and it's just a feel-good story, a really feel-good story. And the way that it's done is feel-good, because even if KT would have still probably been the favorite to make it on in as the highest or the final legend group team, since Nongshim got knocked out, and they probably would have beaten DPlus or BNK, doing it this way just feels way better. And also just extra little wrinkle of complication. It means that LPL is going to play either Gen.G or T1 or DPlus or BNK if something crazy happens as that 4th seed. Like, it won't be KT doing that. It won't be Hanwha Life doing that. It's That is just. It also means that Gen.G and T1 won't be playing each other in the finals. Only one of them can move on and go on, and you would heavily favor Gen.G, but it just wasn't the way that things looked the whole second half of the season when these two teams were the best, and every time they played against each other, we were getting absolute cinema, the best rivalry in 2025. Those two, and then DPlus and BNK FX. But other than those two, like, it was great.
And I've been saying on the show since Monte Wolf actually had Monte in it, I celebrate any non-T1 Gen.G finals. I celebrate it. I've had enough of those. I've had enough. Like, I know it's been like we didn't have it last time, so it's kind of like it feels like it's been a while, but in truth, like, I've had enough. Like, I'm still over it. Maybe in like 2 years, like in LCK 2027, I'll be like, oh yeah, it's been a while. Like, give me that G1, that G1 T1 finals. Yeah, give me that one. It's been a little while, but right now I'm still like, yeah, I think like about 17 of those was enough for me. Yeah.
Also, we got a couple of that over at MSI, man. You had it twice. You had two best of fives of T1, making up for no spring finals. Hopefully we fix that. I really want the spring finals back, man. All right. There is that other series where Hanwha Life Esports remembered, oh yeah, we are reigning champs. And we'll dive into that. But before we do, it's time to remind you about our friends over at HelloFresh. Now, fall time is usually the time, Wolf, where you go back to school and you're learning new things. And as an adult, sometimes you miss that. You're not going back to school, but now would be a good time to learn a new skill. Maybe the skill of cooking. And with fall, there are cooler nights, which means an opportunity for heartier meals and something warm. And that's where HelloFresh has you covered, bringing you something comforting and chef-designed recipes, which are fresh, seasonal ingredients right to your door. This season, they've taken things to a higher level with the biggest menu refresh yet. Say hello to a whole new way to do dinner. They've doubled their menu. Now you can choose from over 100 options each week, including seasonal dishes and recipes from around the world. Dig into bigger portions that'll keep everyone satisfied. Healthier as well, with feeling great with high protein and veggie-packed recipes. HelloFresh now helps you eat greener with new veggie-packed recipes that have 2 or more veggies, and you can get steak and seafood recipes delivered every week at no extra cost. There's 3 times more seafood now on the menu. Discover new seasonal produce each week, from snap peas to stone fruit to corn on the cob and more. So if you want to pick up the new skill set of cooking and making sure it's easy, you don't have to worry about ingredients going bad. You don't have to worry about how do I follow this recipe while you're shopping. They've got you covered over at HelloFresh. So head on over to HelloFresh.com/Monte10FM now to get 10 free meals and a free item for life. 1 box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box for new subscribers only. It varies by plan. That's HelloFresh.com/Monte10FM to get 10 free meals and a free item for life. That's HelloFresh.com/Monte10FM to get 10 free meals and a free item for life. Teach yourself the skill set of cooking and make it easy, delicious, and healthy with our friends over at HelloFresh. All
That's
right.
Monte with an E, of course.
Let's get in there with T1 and Hanwha Life Esports. This one felt like it was going to be, I don't know. I felt like, and everyone felt like, the 14, it wasn't the 14-0 prediction that KT was. Who was it? Pony and Wadid. They were the knowers of
I mean, it would have been pretty absurd
win.
if it was completely T1. Like, if it was a whole, I mean, it was actually still quite high. Like, I was surprised. Like, I voted 3-2. I was like, we just don't know. T1 looked bad in their last series. But I've said multiple times in the show already, like, I wasn't ready to read into that too much. But we hadn't seen Hanwha in a while, and Hanwha is also just has a lot of problems.
They limped to the finish.
Yeah. So, like, I was like, I guess it's going to be a 5-game series where draft decides everything, and it's going to be, T1 who win it out in game 5 because it's the T1 magic that I called it yesterday, where it's just an outplay from Faker, he makes some really cool call, or they have this global draft, and T1 just are able to set up some cool dives and snowball a game, or Faker plays a Kali and gets kills early and just takes over. I thought it was going to be something like that, where it's hard to know, it's hard to quantify, but T1 win in the end. Like that.
Yeah.
That's all I could imagine, because we hadn't seen Hanwha, and I didn't trust the warning signs that we talked about earlier. However, big viewers and knowers and Monte Wolf Show watchers will know that I, a few weeks ago, did specifically say this might be a concern for T1's drafting, that we've seen in these series where we've seen the drafting might be a concern. There may be some issues with T1's drafting that might show up in best of fives later on.
You did say that.
I did say that. I did mention that. I did kind of allude to this being a possible issue. And it did show up in T1's drafting in best of fives in this series.
Also, in game 1, like, the biggest noise from T1 fans in game 1 was probably... No, that's not true. Just the early big gasp came from Guma locking in the Kai'Sa, right? Immediately, everyone's like, whoa! I was like, did the game start? Like, what happened? I was off that day. I was off yesterday, but I came in because I got an extra ticket to watch, and I thought I was working, so I came in anyways. And so I was in the back. I forgot what I was doing, and whoa! I was like, whoa! What happened? Dude, first blood already? No, it was just Kai'Sa getting locked in, and T1 kind of doing what GenG did in their draft, right? It was like that early smolder, and we're like, that's weird, man. And a little different, right? Because Hanwha Life is the second seed, but they came in as the underdog, and so therefore I think T1 felt comfortable planning for best of fives beyond this best of fives in the upper bracket finals against Gen.G, best of fives at Worlds, and let's test these things out. Let's see if you can do it. And although a solid performance by Guma, we had a replay section breaking it down on the space of like just the natural instincts in those gut check moments didn't quite work out in big team fights if you're Guma, and the team wasn't playing with him. And so it's not just a Guma issue on this Kai'Sa, but it's like someone needs to speak up about what Guma can hit, what he can't hit in the fights. That was Wadid's big point there, and I agree. Like, people will point to like Guma can play Kai'Sa, he's done it before, and it's like, yes, of course he can play Kai'Sa. He's a professional AD carry, he's won Worlds multiple times, but it's about those microsecond decisions on like, what is your objective? What do you need to hit? What kills you? And then what is the next step that the team needs to take that someone needs to do when he's playing Kai'Sa and goes in?
Yeah. I mean, that was a really good breakdown from Wadid when he went in and died. And there were so many times in that first game where he did his job, but then subsequently blew up. And then it was like, oh, well, that's your only damage because you have only Kai'Sa as your damage in this draft. No one really wanted to say it. No one really wanted to use it. Everyone was like, "Oh, he played Kai'Sa. He doesn't play that. That's quite unique. That's kind of cool." But it didn't make that much sense in the draft for me. What would have, however, made sense would have been Zeri. When they have a Braum on the other team and not other really strong ways to lock down the Zeri, could have played Zeri. He doesn't play Zeri very often, even though like when he does play it, he does decently well. Yep. He just doesn't enjoy playing Zeri. Or maybe the team just hates drafting around Zeri. I don't know what the real answer is here, but they had Galio, Jarvan, Sion. It's a perfect angle for Zeri to pop off and carry and do big damage and be really difficult to lock down and kill. Whereas Kai'Sa goes in, kill one, and die. And then, they have the other ones that do damage, and we don't. And so, like, yeah, you have a bunch of frontliners. And Keria had so many good ults, and he's like, but we have Kai'Sa, though, so that's all we have. And so it doesn't really work. Like, Keria's Nico, like, how many big Pop Blossoms did he get? I think part of it's because Hanwha just didn't care. Like, oh yeah, you can Pop Blossom me, but it doesn't matter. Then the one time it did matter, Viper just outplayed everybody and kited away on Lucian, popped off. But like there was that one moment too where Zeus, like as he died, killed Guma with his pullback on his Q, and then it's like, well, if Guma lives there with like 100 health, then maybe he actually can do something in this fight, but he can't, and he doesn't. And like, the draft had serious issues. This was, I think, probably like my least favorite draft from T1 out of the three, and that's saying a lot because they also picked Xayah Renata in game 2, and the Ziggs angle was definitely strong. It was there, but they also could have played Zeri, which was the other pick that I expected. That we did also talked about and broke down a little bit on the desk with Ox. That there was not a great way to kill Zeri either. Hanwha had so many different options here, but the Ziggs was incredibly impactful, difficult to lock down. Guma and Keria played the lane well because they have the Renata. That's a different lane than when you're playing like Xayah plus Rakan or even a melee support in that lane. Like you're never going to have any agency into the Ziggs. They played the early parts of it well, but then lane swap happened. Viper got out of the lane, started doing massive amounts of damage. They had a range problem. They couldn't engage on him. Zeka obviously side laning like a madman in this game. Flame Horizon Faker, by the way, in the end. Which I think we didn't even mention yesterday. But
no, I didn't even know that.
And like he was just a madman sides, did a lot of damage, but also was just so much additional utility in this draft for Hanwha Life because they have hard engage, and Guma just can't play the game. Like this is not a Guma skill issue in this game, in my opinion. It's a draft issue that makes it so difficult for him to play Xayah here. And so, like, in game 1, he made some decisions that were incorrect, but the draft didn't help him, right? Like, if he was playing a different AD carry, which might have been his choice, by the way. So if we knew that, I would blame him, but we don't know that. If he had more agency in game 1, he probably could have done more. Had some issues, like, decision-making wise there. Game 2, I think, played as well as he probably could have given the draft. And, like, the laning phase was great by him, but it's still ultimately not enough. And so they end up losing that game. And then from there, we go into game 3, where I look at Hanwha's draft, and I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, will this actually work? They have an insane front line, right, with the Jax, Xinjiao, and the Silas. But then they pick Smolder and the Alistar, and I'm like, ooh, that doesn't win. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
And, like, they have the counterpick Gragas into the Jax, and then Kiana can skirmish well with this Cassiopeia, and, like, T1 could just fight all the time and get ahead. Like, I looked at this and I was like, okay, this T1 draft, in part because Hanwha kind of ran it down in the draft. In my mind at that time, before we got into the Rift, I was like, this one feels like winnable. This one feels like, okay, T1 has a pretty nice edge here. T1's got some angles. Then we go into the game, and Hanwha are cooking hard. They're lane swapping early. They put Viper in the top lane. They put the Jax bottom, and he just sits there with Counter-Strike and farms what he can. And Viper gets free stacks while he's hitting Doran. And then there's a moment, actually, someone pointed this out to me after the game. I didn't realize it. There's a moment where, like, the lane swap detector comes in, and, like, Doran starts getting free farm, and then Delight, like, freaks out and runs away. And then he starts making those plays on Faker. Because it looked like this is super calculated. Like, Delight has this like super well prepared because he knows the exact timing he needs to leave the lane and stuff. It looked like he just realized, or maybe someone told him like, hey, lane swap detected, like you need to leave. And then he just was like, I guess I'll just ruin Faker's life. And then he just went and started taking Faker's flash away and ganking him repeatedly. And then the rest of the game obviously played out as everyone remembers it, where Viper was able to hit his stack breaking point. They gave up the Drakes. Atlas and I talked about in the cast a lot. Sorry for rehashing it a little bit, but the biggest standout for me, besides like the issues in draft for T1 and Viper's incredible play, was how measured Hanwha were. They were like, no, we're going to give that Dragon because you know what? This is an insanely strong Kiana comp, and we can't fight into this. We'll lose. The game will be over. We're just going to have to be willing to give it up. We just have to let the soul go. We just have to give that away and say, we'll fight you later. We're better. We're stronger later. And that was true. That was accurate. They identified their win con so incredibly well. They were super slow, methodical, farm it out. Like, Viper's like, I'll get the Raptor camp. That's actually what we get here because I need just a little bit more time. We didn't get enough time. We didn't get one of those early dragons. If you get an early dragon, you have the freedom to give those up and it doesn't matter. And if this was like a Hextech soul or an Infernal soul, you probably don't have that luxury, right, in this game to actually give that up. You have to fight for it. But in this case, like, they were able to give it away and still win the game. And Viper performed incredibly well, and the little dragon that did, and they win the series. But it looked really practiced from Hanwha Life how they did this. I still stand by what I said yesterday. I'm not sure if you really should be showing this when you're up 2-0 against T1. Now also KT know about this, GenG know about this. You probably won't get away with this again. I don't know if I agree with the decision to show it here and to just basically turn a best of 5 where you're in perfect upset position into a scrim, but like obviously it was prepared. They showed it here on stage. It worked. It's another strategy they now have, which could draw some bans and could give them benefits elsewhere otherwise, but it was cool. It worked. Clearly this was something that Hanwha came to play yesterday, and maybe they didn't need to use it, but they used it and it worked. And that means maybe they have other stuff up their sleeves as well.
Well, yes, maybe that. I think the opposite side of that is they were happy with doing this at game 3, that if it gets banned out later on, they're more than happy to take something standard. Because more important than the draft wrinkle that was there, which was a great wrinkle, and they've now joined Gen.G and T1 to have great draft wrinkles against the top teams, and now KT as well. The play was better. The discipline was better. That game 3, if there's a moment I want everyone to watch, it is the BNK FX game 1 Otacon take. That was beautiful. Just go watch that moment. That is what Otacon should be. But if there's a game, like a whole game to watch, I think it's that game 3 Hanwha T1 game, mainly because they both played it out the way that they were supposed to. And to be fair to T1, Owner's Smite was like less than half a second off of getting Chemtech Soul. He had used Smite in the fight. It was coming back up after that 15-second cooldown, and Viper just happened to cue it with the super smolder breath. I forgot what it's called. Super scorcher breath. Right before the Smite came up, right as the HP was at the perfect amount of health, and was able to take it away before dying and buy 5 more minutes of time. Because if T1 take that, they've done everything right. They took all the Drakes, they forced them into a fight at Otacon at 20 minutes, because Otacon is pretty valuable, and they didn't win the fight, but they were able to get an opportunity there out of Hanwha, and were able to still stack the Chemtech Soul point. So it just felt like, wow, this is a great game of League of Legends with two teams that know what their jobs are and are doing it so, with compositions where if it does go crazy late, T1 kind of hedged their bets a little bit with a Cassiopeia, with the Yunara. But then you have playmakers on the opposite side by Hanwha in Xin Zhao and Silas to bridge the gap while Smolder and Jax get online. Like, it was just really good all around, except by Doran, who looked like international Doran with multiple different combos on the Gragas, and one of his biggest contributions was giving Zeka Gragas ult. Like, it was a pretty tough run by Doran, and in one of the key team fights, you just go back and look at Faker's ult. Hits 1, maybe 2 people, gets cleansed out. You look at Owner's ult, is in mid-river. Like, hits 1, maybe 2 people, and then Guma tries to go in, and they needed a little bit more, just one more person by Owner in the supreme display of talent, stunning everyone in the middle of the river. One more person getting Petrify's Gaze by Faker. Again, difficult because they weren't facing him, and the margins were so small, despite all of us knowing what the storyline was going to be. Great series to watch throughout.
Yeah, I mean, this time I can't defend Doran the same way I did against DPlus, because in the DPlus series, he sacrificed himself for a lot of gain. In this game, especially the Gragas game, was really relatively low value. I think this was, in my mind, the best Qiyana draft we've seen so far in the LCK. She's 0-3 now. But this was the best angle. It didn't work though. I feel like the proficiency for Owner didn't feel like it was there. Like, their first fight, they took really well on grubs with it, and like they were able to use the counter that well there. He got accelerated, he hard farmed, like he knew the game plan, he knew how to buy those 2 items. Like, you get the Profane Hydra and the Axiom Arc, they're both cheaper right now. You get that 2-item spike. I mean, you just get accelerated. You outpace, whether it's a Wukong or a Xin Zhao, whatever, you get into a good spot that way. And then you have the ultimate that can be team fight warping, and you just constantly skirmish because you have this low range Cassiopeia that does a lot of damage. Yunara does a lot of damage, and you just basically go, okay, they're not online yet. We can cut through those melees. Smolder can't do anything before he has his stacks, and you win the game before then. But they weren't able to force those skirmishes. Like, Hanwha were too safe, too careful, and I just didn't expect it. Like, I really thought that we were going to go to game 4 at least. When I saw the draft, I was like, it was the lane swap stuff and all the strategy, all the preparation from Hanwha that I didn't expect. The cool drafting here. And it's like Hanwha's coming out with these cool drafts and concepts. I'm watching KT Rolster play Zoe and Lissandra. And this playoffs is suddenly super interesting, right? It's like actually incredibly different than our expectations were. The fact that we have 2 upsets in real playoffs, not like some play-ins upset that nobody cares about, right? Like, this is like real big series that are worlds determining. And we're seeing these upsets happen in dominant form from Hanwha. It's interesting. Like, we don't know now who's the favorite to win the LCK. Like, I would say most people would still say Gen.G because it's a safe bet, but you cannot say definitively the same way that Gen.G's the favorite to win LCK that you could a few days ago. You just can no longer say it with the same weight. It doesn't have the same weight. It doesn't have the same gravity. You can also no longer say, like, I don't think KT Rolster could win Worlds. Like, I don't think you could say that now. Like, KT could actually win Worlds is like what you have to say. You don't predict that they're going to win Worlds, but you're like, wait a minute, like, this is what reality are we living in? I feel like we ended up in a different reality. Like, this isn't actually what's supposed to be happening. And now I'm worried for T1. Like, what if T1 just bombs out? What if they don't make it, don't go to Worlds? You know, like, that's bad for everybody. That's bad for viewership at Worlds. It's bad for does this team stay together? Who stays together next year? Like, what happens? How much money does T1 spend? A lot of that's based on the fact that they win world championships, right? And or at least perform incredibly well at Worlds, but they've won the last 2. That gets you money. That gets you the ability to tell investors, like, give me the money and I'll do it again with your name on it.
It's just, I'm not there yet, and maybe I'll get closer to that, Wolf, the day of that the World's qualifying game, just because it's the day of. But T1 is so much better than DPlus and BNK FX at their peak potential, and neither one of those teams showed their peak potential this year, I'd say, like, all together at the same time. And that's why I feel pretty comfortable about T1 still going. But the fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that this isn't KT in this position, like, even if it was Hanwha, we would understand, right?
Just
like,
think about Raptor, man. Raptor might get him, though. You know what I mean? I'm like, you actually, if you're a T1 fan, you got to be scared. Like, Raptor might get in there. Like, he might just take your world spot away. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Because, again, a few weeks ago, when we were doing all pro votes, only you saw the angle, but, like, no one would have been like, there's any chance FX crack T1. Like, what? But then I watched this series with Hanwha today. I watched the series with DPlus a few days ago, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, actually, could DPlus do it even? Like, the DPlus played to 5. BNK actually really strong, incredible jungler right now. Owner's jungle performance was a little off in that last series against Hanwha. You start to be scared, right? Like, I 100% agree with what you're saying. You can trust that T1 will bounce back. That's exactly what I said after they barely beat DPlus with Carrier got the hook on aiming. I was like, no. I trust that on T1's best day, like, they 3-2 Hanwha in round 2. But now I'm kind of like, do I trust that? Like, I'm not sure if I'm ready to trust that right now. I think you're probably right. And T1, like, if I had to predict right now, would T1 beat either DPlus or BNK? I would probably say yes. But I'm also going to watch DPlus versus BNK before I make that decision officially to see what their form looks like, because I might be predicting in that lower bracket round 2 that T1 does not make Worlds, does get knocked out. And by the way, to make it to the finals, they have to beat Gen.G as well. Then go to the lower bracket final and either get revenge on Hanwha or beat KT Rolster, who are looking for top form. It's not a good time to be a T1 fan right now. I think a lot of T1 fans are like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. Like, I was there. I was like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine after the game 5 against DPlus. A little bit less fine when you're on your last life. A little bit less fine. A little bit less comforting.
I will say that couple things come to mind. The T1 fans, they were pissed. They were angry. Like it was not sad, and like I don't know. Like I guess the way I think about it right now is the way I feel about Shopify Rebellion losing to Red Canids over in LTA, the LTA. Wow, it's not North LTA, where it's like, you guys are better than this. You shouldn't do that. I'm mad at your performance, and I'm mad that you didn't achieve your potential. It wasn't that. It felt more like, I'm mad the story didn't go the way that I wanted, and I need, like, they felt like I just felt the anger. There was so much anger, not like disappointment. And I can only imagine what that's like inside the room right now. Like the guys just don't worry about LCK Cup right now. You have one series on Thursday. After whoever you play will play on Wednesday. Like that's an advantage as well. Like they have to show their cards. They might be worn out after a 5-game series, whether that's Showmaker in this super long season that poor Showmaker has had, or Vikla, who has had a really good bounce back, but you got to remind him he was the 10th, maybe at times 11th best mid laner in the league, and you have to come out firing after game 1. And if you do that, whoever you win will fold. Make them lose the first game, and DPlus and BNK FX are fragile teams. They are fragile teams. Make them lose the first game. Order will be established. You win your series on Thursday. You're going to Worlds. Friday is off. Saturday is KT Hanwha. You don't play again until later on, and you're good. Things will settle back down. You play Gen.G on Sunday. But all the effort needs to go into this week. Don't worry about LCK Cup. All the effort needs to go into this week if you're T1. And just play to your potential. Play to your potential. So that's my feeling here, because it is like, it will be disappointing to see Showmaker not make it. Like, I will be sad. Cronny will be sad. But I think it'll be, the shift in LoL esports will be felt if T1 doesn't make it. And I'm not talking about just viewership. I'm talking about the way that people evaluate what is good and what isn't good, the way that people evaluate formats, the way that people evaluate best of fives. Like, I just, I think that the shaping of what this means is so big, since Gen.G and T1 were both down here, and you don't have an easy fall guy.
This is the moment where we find out, like, only one super team made it. Like, we had 3 super teams, right? Hanwha is arguably like the least super of the 3, but like they are still a super team. Like,
yes,
it's
they
a
are,
super
they are,
team,
they are.
right? Like,
yeah.
And if T1 and Gen.G like both don't make it to the finals, like, and we could end up with like a KT Rolster Hanwha finals or something like that, then it might like actually shape the economy of roster building in the future. Again, like, one of these teams could still like go on to, like, Gen.G could lose like to let's say KT again in the lower bracket final, and then like they go to Worlds though and win the whole thing, and then it's totally fine and it's all justified. And we've seen that from T1 very recently, by the way. But if like these teams bomb out, don't have good performances at Worlds, don't go to LCK finals, then maybe it creates a world where teams don't spend, like our top teams, Gen.G and T1, don't spend as much money to keep their rosters, and some talent is freed up, and we get a little bit more league parity. I have been wanting this for a long time, because right now it's money bags win the LCK. Like, it's been that way for a while, where it's like, okay, whoever spends the most money gets the best roster and puts it together and keeps it together because it's the most expensive, but we have unlimited money, like, they win. And that's kind of been
baseball.
The truth. Yeah, it's just kind of been the truth, right? And to have like a roster, like, let's say KT wins Worlds like DRX did in the past, maybe that changes how everybody looks at how you need to spend money and how you could build a roster. And like, there's no denying that people won't just be like, well, I guess it's okay to have perfect in the top lane. Like, maybe like some changes need to be made, but I mean that Peter can be a world champion, whereas like our expectations were Peter could never be a world champion because he's not in the list of like top 15 players that are on the top 3 teams that are the most paid and like bought, etc. So like it was to me incredibly exciting when, like, in my opinion, for like how I look at how I wish the league were in terms of like roster parity, when T1 couldn't just get, they just couldn't keep Zeus, and he was like, no, I'm doing another thing. T1's like, but I have everything, and then he's like, no, I'm doing the other thing over there. Yeah, you guys have to have Doran, sorry. And T1 was like, but I always get what I want. And it's like, no, actually this time, not this time, T1. And like that was like, just by the way, Zeus going to another super team in Hanwha Life Esports. But like, if KT wins the whole thing, that's just so, like, we haven't seen that. When Hanwha won Summer last year, still a super team, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's not a team with like newer players who don't have like multiple LCK titles, right? Or world championships. Right. Like, this is an unproven team that, you know, where you have BDD Cuz and you're like, holy shit. But then you also have Duckdom and you're like, I'm not sure, is this, like, we gave up hype for this? And then you have Perfect in the top lane still, and this team can still do it? Then KT is like, cool. You know, like, we did it. We had the most efficient budget. We still won the thing. And then like other teams might think differently. So that to me is like one of the exciting parts that could happen in terms of you saying if T1 doesn't make it, things change. Like, I think that could change the economy of rosters a little bit, because right now we're in esports winter. It's very cold. There's a lot of spending going on. People are trying to cut spending everywhere. And if you spend and you don't win, it's like, you know, this is really, 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 really not good. Not it.
Yeah. And T1 are some of our biggest spenders because they've been able to win and then win consistently and been to the last 3 world finals. They've won the last 2. And it's kind of covered over the cracks of like, okay, well, you know, haven't had domestic success at that level, but we're winning worlds. We're world champs. You know, that's what happens in the arguments, and that's what the fans have been eating on as well. Like, oh well, worlds matters the most. But yeah, so I think it would be a seismic change in things and fan view, and yeah. So we'll see what happens here. A huge week out of nothing, Wolf. Out of nothing. Like, this was supposed to be emails.
No one knew.
It was supposed to be KT just getting bodied.
I was just saying, though, what I've been saying all year, just give Gen.G the trophy. I was ready to say that. I was just like, just give him the trophy. Like, there's no way like anyone else gets it, right? There's no way anyone else goes to the finals, right?
Yeah. Man, what a week. What a fantastic week. And also, because we didn't have to say goodbye to anyone yet. All the storylines are still there. Can this crazy rookie in the bot lane just lead this team into the promised land in Diablo? Can the old man stop the trend of getting worse by round since winning a world championship, like, end for Showmaker? Will the dynasty of T1 somehow not make it in? What a way to go. Let's just do the series that we know for Preds, because we know that you guys love jumping on us here. And honestly, I'm a little scared. Everyone's LCK playoffs predictions have been bad. Everyone, I got BNK right, and everyone's like, "Wow, Digon was a no." I was like, "Yeah, I guess like during play-ins, but playoffs, this has been madness." DPlus versus BNK FX. Wolf, who is the team that will face T1 on a less than 24-hour turnaround?
BNK beat KT Rolster in that first game with an incredible setup, but their drafts were very suspect after that. And then DPlus barely lost to T1 because aiming and the incident that happened with the Blitzcrank. And so, you know, it's like, is DPlus just better because they almost beat T1? But then you watch T1 play against Hanwha and you're like, Are T1 just not as good as we thought? Like, it's really hard to quantify, but right now, there's one player of these 10 on both rosters I feel like I can trust, and his name is Raptor. And I think I'm gonna predict I think I'm gonna predict BNK to beat DPlus for the last time. It's like the fourth time in a row I think I've done this, but it's like the last time. And there's going to be another time after this where I go, you know what? I guess I'll give DPlus the edge this time. I think I'm going to go BNK. I don't know if we're doing score predictions. I haven't decided yet, but I think I'm going to expect it's going to be like a longer series, like a 3-1 or a 3-2. But I do think BNK can get it done. Worried about drafts a little bit because DPlus had some real cool stuff in the series against T1. But I think the consistency that Raptor has shown is, for me, like what DPlus fans should be worried about.
I think as much as he's been consistent, Shiwu carrying over the form has been pretty great for him and for Lucid to have another lane to play through. Man, this is my favorite series to watch. This rivalry, it always delivers. It delivered last time when they were qualifying in through play-ins. Oh god, I did vote Raptor third team all pro, and it was cashing in against non-Cuz junglers. But
it's a tough one. This is a tough prediction.
Yeah, I you're right that he is reliable, and he's reliably ganked at level 3 every time. And DPlus, you just have to know this is what he's doing. You have to know. And if you don't know, you're going to lose. You're going to lose if you do that. Cuz figured it out in game 2, right? In game 2 on the Trundle, he tried to invade and gank early, and they stopped him. They killed him. And then what did he do? He came back and bot and ganked again. That's what he's going to do. DPlus, that's all you have to do. CV Max, Bengi, Pumandu, your job is written out for you. Make aiming and barrel aware at 2 minutes and 30 seconds that they have to ward earlier than what they would. Normally 30 seconds earlier, because he's going to be there. He's always there. You have to play like
also,
he's always there.
Also, maybe aiming to stay away from blitzcrank hooks. Maybe tell him to stay away from. Maybe like we just see, you know, a little blitzcrank draft in that best of 5. Maybe
make Barrel play blitzcrank.
You mentioned this earlier, but I do agree with what you said about how, like, now it's lower bracket. It's not DPlus T1 where DPlus are underdogs and they can just be like, it's okay. Even if we lose this, no one will blame us. But like now it's like, if you lose game 1 against BNK, like I could see this spiraling into a 3-0 on either side. Same thing for BNK. Then the drafting, the players lose confidence, and then DPlus 3-0s. Maybe it is a 3-0. Maybe it actually just ends up being that way.
I think it's, if BNK win, it's 3-0. I think if it's DPlus win, I think it's 3-1, because I think Diablo and Kellen are pretty unfazed. Also, I think Vikla is always unfazed by what happens. If Vikla shows up that day, he's either going to be great or he's going to be shit. And he's going to be serviceable or going to be shit. And he's been serviceable. And regardless, like, we haven't had those, like, what are you thinking Vikla moments. Usually when we have that, it's the whole day. And so, yeah, give me DPlus 3-1. I do think that BNK will get a game, and I'm going to be a 3-1 Andy. But if I was predicting BNK, because I think they're going to win game 1, and I think the Barrel's not going to be able to, be aware of the level 3 gank, it's 3-0. I think this team goes mental boom if they lose. So, all right. So 3-1 DPlus for me. Oh gosh. Yeah, we won't predict the T1 because
we just don't know.
We don't know who they're playing.
Yeah, I think it's better to just predict the ones we know.
Yeah, and then let's go KT Hanwha Life Esports. Like, they had a couple of close series in the Legends group. This was where KT had opportunities. This is really where BDD made his MVP. This is where he made his money. It was when he was playing against Hanwha Life Esports. When they played against GenG and T1 early on, they were just getting blasted. But against Hanwha, he had opportunities to play that scaling, and I think he had a couple of not so great Talia games against him. So he had like games where it's like, man, I really wish he had a team around him, and it was like, man, he had opportunities to try and step up. I don't know if he trusts his team here. I don't think that's going to be an issue in this series. Obviously, They're playing with house money. Hanwha, this feels good, but it was expected of themselves. KT, they're living it up. They don't got to play play-ins. They're going directly into Worlds. They have to worry about LPL. They can upset. Perfect has 6 champions he can play. Feels pretty good. Duck Dom, elite? Question mark? Like, you know, you have ways to play on through. Peter's got the vibes. He's going up, up, up. Give me Hanwha Life 3-1.
God damn it, Dion. All I gotta say is Cuz versus Peanut, BDD versus Zeka, and Duckers, and I won't say the other guy on the other side. Give me KT Rolster. KT Rolster. I do think legit though that with the performances of BDD and Cuz together, their synergy is looking really strong. I think T1 underperformed. I think we do have to consider that. And like we were all kind of slightly low on Hanwha until they 3-0 bopped T1. And also like there was draft issues there. Hanwha had the unique smolder draft. They might have some other tricks up their sleeve, but KT are just built to cook right now. Okay, like they, like BDD's pulling out the old recipe book. Like he's going to like the dust going flies away. And he's like pointing to the Zoe. He's like, I think KT Rolster are just gonna outclutch it. I think it's probably gonna be a 3-1 or 3-2 in this series as well. But there's something special about what this team is doing, and there's also something about how Perfect plays that is similar to how Doran used to play when he was on Hanwha. That kind of neutralizes Zeus' playstyle. And I think that even though in most matchups I go, Perfect gets destroyed here. Like against Zeus, I'm like, Zeus tries to destroy him and he's winning, but like they can't use it. And like this, I see in my head this world where it's like Zeus is winning topside, they try to dive, but like Peter unsealed spellbook teleports in and defends Perfect. They play through defending Perfect. Like, we've seen this so many times from KT, right? Where they're able to hold on to Perfect's weak side. And if they want to play through Zeus, I just don't think they can. So maybe they won't, but we've seen so many bad dives with Zeus and Peanut on the top side. Like, we really have. Even into KT Rolster specifically, by the way, in the Legend group. So I think stylistically, it's a good matchup for KT. I think Viper is, especially if he's playing the form we saw from yesterday, better than Duck Dom. But I think Duck Dom is close enough to keep that competitive. And I don't trust Peanut.
This is cope taked, man. Like, yes, short-term memory saying like, oh yeah, they have been able to defend Perfect. Brother, we made a compilation reel of 3 and 4-man dives on Perfect and Cuz just farming his jungle. The playbook is there. The playbook is there. And also, I think it is more important, especially for this Hanwha Life Esports team, that their play was better. I'm not worried about their draft right now. I was more pleasantly surprised by their play. They were disciplined, they were clean, they didn't overforce, and that was what was missing. Like, you had a gaping hole in the jungle in Peanut, and he was my POM yesterday. He made Owner quiet. Like, Owner's escaped all this criticism from yesterday's match. Like, Owner was quiet. Owner,
well, not on the internet. Maybe on our shows a little bit, but yeah,
on our shows. Yeah, sorry.
That was a little. They were a little outspoken about it, but I think this series can go either way. It's incredibly difficult to predict because it's two teams on like peak form right now.
Yeah,
colliding in this upper bracket final. Oftentimes when we have the upper bracket final, we're like, okay, there's the team that's really, really, really strong and no one can touch them, and then the team that will like be destroyed by them. Like, that's often how the upper bracket final looks. It hasn't as recently as like it did in the past. Like, recently it's been a little bit more interesting, but this one is like the most interesting that I can think of in recent memory because it was 2 upset wins and then like 2 teams popping off. So with both of their opponents underperforming a little bit, like Gen.G underperforming a little bit, T1 underperforming a little bit. So I think if you predict either way here, you're not wrong. Like, I think
I agree.
If you predict like a 3-0 either way, I'm kind of like, tell me more. But I do think that I do think that like this series will be really interesting. I think the AD carry position will be quite pivotal, and then I think mid and jungle. I think top is not going to matter as much. I think this is not going to be like the top game unless, you know, Zeus has some Aatrox draft where he gets ahead of Perfect because Perfect plays Scion or something like that. Could be an angle. I could see that happening. I think KT are very aware of that potential weak point there. So,
last bit here for prediction, because we didn't predict T1 because we don't know who they're playing. But how about this? What is the percentage chance that T1 makes it through? You know, like the fan vote kind of percentage chance. I have the percent in my head of what it is.
So you mean like to the finals or just
no, just to the fourth place match. Yeah, just to the fourth place match into Gen.G.
I think I would give T1 about a 55 to 60% chance of going through. I think I give them a slight edge, but like it's not. I wouldn't say any higher than 60% in my mind.
That's crazy.
Like, that's why I think you should be scared. Like if you're a T1 fan, I think you should be scared. You might still get there, but you should be scared. I think you should be scared. I think you should be worried. This is not a sure bet. It's
for
not
me. It's 80%. Like you run this 5 times, they lose once, and I think that's part of the reality of how the highs of Diablo and Raptor. Also, the same side for the pedigree of the veterans on that roster for DPlus. But you should win this. You just have to remember who you are. Play drafts, like show what you got. It's fine. Like maybe people are thinking about like, oh, in the coaching staff are like, oh, well, we got the draft advantage against Gen.G because last year at Worlds because they had to play Game 5 against FlyQuest, and so we don't want to show anything until we get to Worlds China. You got to get to Worlds China. You got to get to Worlds 25. So you show it there. Remember who you are. Get to Worlds. All right. Well, there you have it, man.
I can't wait to see what happens, D-Gon.
I know. We finally got here, man. We had to slog through some weeks. Thankfully, we had all pro right before we go into play into playoffs. Like, we had some weeks, man, but we're here. We made it. And our next episode will be covering the 3 teams that are going to Inspire, the 4 teams that are going to Worlds, the 1 team that'll be playing the LPL in the only play-ins match for Worlds, KEKW weird, and our 2 teams that will be going home and wondering what could have been. And it's going to be a great episode, so you don't want to miss it. Make sure to like and subscribe, comment your thoughts here on the predictions, and make sure to check out our friends over at Mando and HelloFresh. And man, we'll see you guys next week. It's going to be a great one.